Today I want to show you one of my favourite brunch dishes. It's a rhubarb and custard brioche tart and it's absolutely delicious. So brioche has a reputation of being a really hard and difficult recipe to make, especially at home. But actually, I don't think it's as difficult as people think, and I want to show you how to do it really nice and easily today. So what we're going to do, we're going to take our two types of flour, bread flour, plain flour. I use a mix because I really like the finished texture it gives. But if you want to use all plain flour or all bread flour, you absolutely can. And then to that, we're going to add some salt and some sugar, and of course some yeast, and then we're just going to whisk that up together just to combine. Then we're going to throw that in the mixer and then add the milk and eggs. We're going to knead this together on low for about 10 minutes or until the dough is no longer sticking to the sides of the bowl. It's important to knead the dough really well before we add the butter, because when you add fat to the dough, it slows down the development and the strength in the dough. So we want to knead it for a good 10 minutes before we start adding the butter a piece or two at a time. The butter shouldn't be cold straight from the fridge, but it also doesn't want to be really soft and warm. We want it to be pliable but still a little bit cool, and that's because we don't want to warm the dough up too much. So keep adding the butter until it's all fully incorporated into the dough, and then we're going to knead it for another 10 minutes or so, again until it's clearing the sides of the bowl and has formed a ball of dough in the middle on the dough hook. So once the dough is coming away nice and cleanly from the side of the bowl, we'll have this really beautiful, silky, satiny, slightly sticky, but not kind of sticking to your hand dough. So you'll be able to lift it out, but it won't stick, but it'll have this really beautiful stretch. So we're going to place that into a bowl. So another way to test the dough is ready is just grip a small amount between your fingers and just gently stretch it, and you'll be able to see it becomes really thin and membrane-like, and you can even see the light and shadow through it. At this point, we're going to pop the dough in the fridge for a little rest overnight. That's going to do a couple of things. It will slow down the rising so it's ready for us in the morning, but it's also going to make this really soft, sticky dough firmer and just much easier to handle. Whilst that's chilling, we're also going to make our custard in advance, and that's not just going to be a classic custard, we're going to flavour it with some delicious things. We're going to add ginger, star anise, cardamom, and of course vanilla, and it's just going to go beautifully with the rhubarb. So add the milk and the flavourings to a pan along with about half the sugar. Then I'm going to pop that on the heat, bring it to a simmer, and then just turn off the heat, cover the pan and set it aside for an hour or so all those delicious flavours can infuse into the milk. So after an hour, we want to put the milk mixture back on the heat and just bring it to a simmer, and meanwhile we're going to add our egg and yolks to the sugar mixture and whisk that until it's nice and smooth. Once the milk is at a simmer, we're going to pour that into the bowl as we're whisking to make sure we don't get any scrambled egg. Then once that's nicely combined, we're going to pour that back into the pan, but through a sieve this time to remove our flavourings. We're then going to pop it back onto a medium heat, and whilst we whisk constantly, we're going to cook it until it thickens almost to the consistency of a kind of wallpaper paste, really nice and thick. Scrape that finished custard into a bowl, and then we're going to add our butter whilst it's still nice and warm so that it melts really easily. Stir that together until everything is nicely combined. We're going to pop some cling film onto the surface, and again pop that in the fridge along with our brioche dough. So after our dough has had a really nice sleep overnight, hopefully you have too, we're going to divide it into 10 equal pieces. Now you can do this by eye, or my preference is to do by weight, and that just means we're working with equal pieces so everything's going to be the same size and bake at the same time. So we're going to form them into balls of dough, and then we're going to flatten them, and using a little bit of flour on the surface, we're going to roll them out into nice flat discs. Then what we're going to do is pop them inside a little tart tin like this, and the excess of the dough is going to go up the sides, kind of creating the tart shell almost of brioche. So now we can set these aside for about an hour or so, or until proved, and now we can work on the rhubarb. So for our rhubarb, what we're going to do is cut them into little batons, little sticks like this, and we're going to pop a little bit of blood orange juice, some sugar, and then a little bit of vanilla onto the rhubarb, and we're just going to bake it for 10 minutes. We don't want the rhubarb to become really soft because it's going to get baked again on top of the brioche. We just want it to start softening. So once the dough has risen and it's nice and puffy, we're going to brush the border with egg wash and then fill the middle of the tarts with some of our custard. We're then going to sprinkle the exposed border with some pearl sugar and then finish by placing our rhubarb on top. They're then going to go in the oven until they're really nice and golden brown. If you want to take these a little bit further and make them look even prettier whilst the tarts are in the oven, you can take the remaining syrup from the tray that you baked the rhubarb on and just reduce it in a little saucepan for a couple of minutes, just until it's nice and syrupy. And when the brioche comes out of the oven, we can just brush that nice syrup over the rhubarb, just making it extra glossy and shiny and delicious. So that's how you make my rhubarb and custard brioche tarts. They're so delicious and well worth trying. If you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe and click on the notification bell to be the first to find out when my new recipes come out each and every week. Until then, I'm gonna have a coffee, enjoy the weekend, and eat a brioche tart.